easier too with the Republicans. So the debt ceiling deal came through, and that had to be closed by Friday, right? Um, and it did, and Biden signed it, but it's a temporary thing, so it only kicks the can down the road till January. So there wasn't a long-term solution here, but that's all that the new Republican Speaker Mike Johnson can get because there was a ton of infighting, and so we're going to watch a little bit because this is what this same thing is what happened to Kevin McCarthy when they ousted him, and Mike Johnson just did it. So we'll see what happens to him. I'm sure he'll be okay, but it didn't go well. So here's what's this Ali Velshi, and he's gonna cover this real quick. What went on? Oh, I keep muting everything today. All right, here we go.
Within the dysfunctional House Republican caucus continue to derail progress. During a conference-wide call yesterday afternoon, the new Speaker, Mike Johnson, unveiled his plan to fund the government, which involves a novel and untested approach called a laddered continuing resolution, or CR. Under this plan, funding for some services and agencies, such as military, veterans programs, departments of transportation and housing and urban development, among others, will be extended at current levels until the first deadline of January the 19th. Meanwhile, funding will be extended until February 2nd, a couple weeks later, for the rest of the government, including for the Departments of State, Justice, and Health and Human Services. Now, this will be a so-called clean bill. No other provisions will be attached to it, meaning it will not include funding for Ukraine, Israel, or border security, the three main sticking points driving divisions in Congress recently. But it didn't take long for Republicans to once again come out against their own party's proposal. Just minutes after Johnson announced the laddered CR, at at least three House Republicans announced their opposition to the bill. Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene said she will be voting no on this clean continuing resolution. Warren Davidson, Republican of Ohio, also said he'll be voting against it.
And so, just to I'll just skip to the end here. What happened was he passed it. They passed it, but that's because the Democrats voted for it. A lot of the Republicans didn't. Now, the reason they didn't is the whole point of the debt ceiling is it's the one little tool they have to try and blackmail the government, blackmail Biden and the Senate into doing what they want. But it's gotten to the point where they've used this gun so many times that, using the government, the funding as hostage so many times that nobody takes them seriously anymore because you have to fund the government. Which is why Biden didn't say anything, and he let it run up right up to the line and didn't even care. Because he knew they were going to pass something. If they don't, then they know the Republicans are going to get blamed for it.
Right. Yeah, honestly, it's one of those things that maybe the first couple times it, really was like enough of a threat to kind of work as blackmail, so to speak.
Right.
But yeah, that play has been made so many times.
Right.
I mean, geez, how many times? I'm thinking how many times, since I moved to New York 10 years ago, and I feel like I don't even know, so many times.
Right.
It's like, oh, yeah, that again. Oh, yeah, okay, that again. Yeah, well, they'll figure it out,
Yeah, well, I remember I talked to, when I was a cop, I remember talking to a federal agent who was a kidnapping negotiator. And that was what he was trying to do. And he made a couple comments that I hadn't really thought about before because I'd never been in that situation, never hoped to never be in that situation where I'd have to negotiate something like that. But he was basically saying, well, first off, the problem you have with kidnapping is it's the longest distance from a criminal to his money. And he's like, because you only have a party of one to negotiate with, right? You're usually negotiating with the family or the police or whoever it is, but it's not like you're negotiating and you can take a lot of different bids here on whether or not you release the hostage, right? The kidnap victim. He's like, the other thing too is it's kind of a dead end because the only thing you can really threaten to do is to kill the kidnapping victim, right? The hostage. But you're not going to do that because you can only do it once. Once you've done it, you've got nothing left to bargain with. And so they've done
That's true. It's making like your big play all right there. Like you get to make that one big play one time.
Right. And they got it on Obama, and then ever since then, it's been like, we don't care. And it's kind of gone down from there. And now Biden was just like, I'm not even going to address it. You guys pass a bill and put it on my desk, or you don't. I mean, that's pretty much what happened. And so we're in a bad situation for Mike Johnson, who's the Speaker of the House, because he can't have the government shut down be the first thing that happens on his watch. Right? So he had to cut some sort of deal, and he wasn't going to do it with his people, with the Republicans, so he had to go beg the Democrats. So that's what this deal was. I'm going to take everything out of it and just make it about keeping the government up, because he knew the Democrats would be like, okay, we'll vote for that. So you're taking all your hostage negotiation shit, you're taking all the hostages out of the game, and we're just negotiating for a delay. But the Republicans are all pissed about it. And it's the same sort of shit that got the previous speaker, Kevin McCarthy, ousted from the chair. But we'll watch a little bit more of this, and then I want to get into sort of the consequences of all this shit that they've been doing.
Other than looking like a bunch of spoilers.
Yeah, no kidding.
Is as polite as I can muster. And the Texas Congressman Chip Roy posted on X, quote, my opposition to the clean CR just announced by the speakers of the House GOP cannot be overstated, end quote. Now, Roy is against the plan because it doesn't include spending cuts, which is one of the sticking points for Republican hardliners. With 3 Republicans already opposing it, it leaves open the possibility that Mike Johnson, the Republican Speaker, is going to need Democrats' help to pass this bill, which has been the case with the previous debacles in Congress this year. But it's unclear if Democrats are going to be willing to help them out again this time, since Democrats in both chambers of Congress reportedly really dislike this idea. The White House.
Well, they did. It wasn't quite the same deal as he proposed. They didn't do the latter thing that he wanted to do. They just said, okay, we'll kick the can down the road to January. And you guys can try and get your shit together by then, I guess. But that's pretty much what happened. And Biden already signed it. So the upside is we're okay till January. But the problem is you keep doing this bullshit with the debt ceiling. All right? Kevin McCarthy did it earlier this year. Mike Johnson did it again this time. Now we've got January again. So this is 3 times in a year we're going to have to deal with this shit where they're trying to take this hostage.
Yeah, so the problem is, like, it's like the little boy who cried wolf, right?
Right.
At a certain point, even if you know there are wolves in the area, and, like, if one actually appears, it's actually going to be a problem, you kind of just stop worrying about wolves and just start being really annoyed at that damn kid.
Yeah, and then at that point you kind of get the attitude of, well, he's crying wolf. Well, hopefully it's an actual wolf this time and it gets him, so we don't have to fucking listen to him anymore, which is kind of what's going on here. You know,
yeah.
I'm washing my hands of it. The problem is that you do this and there's always going to be even more consequences to just being this volatile and irresponsible about how to do everything. If you're always creating a crisis that doesn't need to be created, it creates more damage. And like Bernie Sanders said in the previous clip, you know, the government or the people of the country already think really lowly of Congress. And this is why. It's because you guys keep picking fights and dragging shit out. And no. And even this debt ceiling thing, when they passed it, there was all kinds of arguing on the floor. And I guess the previous speaker, Kevin McCarthy, elbowed some guy and they got into a little bit of a verbal altercation. I mean, it was just bullshit. But this is what you get when you have the Republican rule. And like I said, this fascist wannabe kind of shit. They all want to be Stalin. And, you know, the problem is that, you know, when Stalin died, first he had a stroke, right? And they didn't, I mean, they argued about whether or not they should even call a doctor. His cabinet didn't. Why? Because they didn't want him around anymore.
Like, I'm kind of over him. I don't want to make the call. You can make the call.
Right.
Nah, I don't want to call. You make the call.
Yeah, they basically let him lay on the floor in his own piss for the better part of a day before they decided to do anything. Man. Oh.
And then at that point, saving him is probably a bad idea, because if he realizes you're one of the guys that let him lay on the floor on his own piss, that's going to be another thing.
Well, they lucked out because he died shortly after that anyway. But yeah, but then power struggles
At that point, I'm just saying that's a choice you have to sort of commit to at a certain point, you know?
Well,
like, you got to commit to that one.
Well, if somebody was saying, wouldn't it be nice if Donald Trump just had a heart attack on the toilet or something? It's like, I don't want to wish will on anybody, or ill will on anybody, but yeah. Yeah, I mean.
No, you could not wish ill will, but you could also say, well, I wouldn't